Once a god, now in exile among mortals, Loki has hidden in silence for centuries. But when Sutur, the fireborn giant of endings, rises and fells the gods of Asgard, the trickster must reclaim his true power and embrace the chaos in his blood, one of fire and frost united. The wind rolled in from the fjords like a ghost from forgotten wars, biting through the thatch-roofed homes of Hrolfto village and howling against the stone chapel atop the hill. Few dared to question the man who lived alone in that chapel, a lean, sharp-eyed figure in a threadbare cloak who went by the name Varric. He arrived nearly 20 winters ago, bearing no kin, no trade, and no past. The villagers whispered, of course. They called him clever, dangerous, cursed. His pranks were strange, his speech too clean for a farmer, his eyes far too knowing. But when wolves stalked the herds or bandits crept near, Varric always knew before anyone else. His warnings saved lives. That was enough. They did not know he was Loki, once a god, now a ghost walking among mortals. Gone were his golden halls and firelit feasts, stripped of titles of honor, of home. He had chosen exile over chains. Asgard had spat him out like rot from the tree of Yggdrasil, and he wore their contempt like a second skin. Even now, centuries later, his heart burned, not from longing, but from defiance. If the gods had cast him into the dirt, he would thrive in the muck. But on that day, even the dirt trembled. A roaring column of flame split the sky open above the village square, searing the clouds and setting the nearby pines ablaze. The villagers screamed and scattered as a beam slammed into the earth, cracking the stones and tearing up the cobblestones. Smoke fumed outward, blinding, suffocating. And then, through the haze, he emerged. God. Heimdall, guardian of the Bifrost, collapsed onto the scorched earth. His once radiant armor was blackened, his great horn shattered at his side, golden blood dripping from his wounds that pulsed with divine ruin. His eyes, once all-seeing, were dimming. Loki stepped forward, cloak fluttering. "Well," he muttered dryly, "I'd say you're far from your post." Heimdall gasped, grabbing Loki's wrist with a strength that shouldn't have remained. "Sutur has broken free." The words struck harder than thunder. Loki's smirk faltered. "He's not like the others," Heimdall rasped. "He is ancient, born from the fire before fire. He slew Thor, captured Odin, Asgard, his ash." Loki's expression twisted into something unreadable. Grief strangled into a sneer. "And let it burn," he said. "Let the golden halls crumble." Heimdall's grip tightened. "You don't mean that." "I do," Loki snapped, pulling away. "They exiled me, remember? Laughed as they cast me down. They never once looked back. But you did." The silence that followed was colder than the wind. Heimdall coughed, blood flecking his lips. "There's still a way. You must retrieve Leviathan. Only it can wound Sutur." Loki froze. "Leviathan? It's with Hel. You know how that ended." "She's still your daughter." "No," Loki said flatly. "She's a queen of corpses and curses." Thunder cracked again, not from storm, but from the trembling of the earth. The skies churned crimson. Heimdall, breathing raggedly now, looked up. "He's breaching the veil. If you don't go now, Midgard will fall before dawn." Loki hesitated, then slowly he turned his gaze toward the crumbling clouds. "Damn you," he whispered, and for the first time in centuries, the god of mischief began to move for purpose. The dying shimmer of the Bifrost tore the air with a sound like splitting ice. Loki didn't flinch. He stood over Heimdall's fading form, watching as the guardian's eyes dimmed into a lifeless sheen. The final strands of rainbow light crackled at his feet, raw and unstable from Heimdall's weakened call. Loki muttered a curse under his breath, tightened his cloak, and stepped into the beam. The world vanished, then came the fall, not a plummet, but a pulling, as if his soul were being unraveled and woven anew. The wind here wasn't wind at all. It was made of whispers, names, regrets, broken oaths. The voices of the dead clawed at him as he descended, brushing his mind with memories, not of his own. Mothers calling for sons, warriors screaming in endless defeat. He shut his eyes. Ignore it. It's just Hel's way of welcoming. When he landed, the ground cracked like bone underfoot. Helheim was colder than any realm. Colder, not in temperature, but in feeling. The air was damp with sorrow, the sky an endless grey swirl that never shifted. Black trees clawed at the sky like frozen corpses. Creatures moved beyond sight, eyes like coals, bodies like smoke. They watched, always watched. Loki, a man of gods and monsters, felt small. She waited on her throne with petrified roots and skulls. The queen of this desolation, Hel, goddess of death, sat motionless, her expression unreadable. Her beauty was terrible, half her face radiant like a morning star, the other half withered to bone. The contrast was not grotesque, but divine. She did not rise when he approached. I wondered how long it would take, she said coolly. Has the world ended again already? Loki smiled faintly. It's working on it. Hel leaned forward. And you come crawling, after all these centuries. He bowed mockingly. Dearest daughter, you lost the right to call me that long ago. I never lose anything, he replied, stepping closer. I simply misplace it. Her gaze narrowed. I need Leviathan, he said. Only it can cut through Sutur. And what makes you think I'd give it to you? Because if I win, Loki said, voice softening, I'll make you queen, not just of Helheim, of all 9 realms. No more shadows, no more bones. For the first time, Hel looked uncertain, but she did not answer. Instead, the illusions began. He walked through memories, his betrayal, her abandonment, 1,000 painful truths twisted into lies. Fire chased him, storms screamed with her voice, wolves tore at his image. She tested every crack in his armor, every guilt he buried. But Loki, god of mischief, wore masks layered like silk, and beneath them, a flicker of love still glowed. A love he never admitted. That was the truth Hel could not destroy. She emerged again, unflinching. Still, you lie, she said, but you believe it, and that's enough. She lifted her hand beneath the throne, bound in frostfire chains. Pulsed, Leviathan, a scepter forged of chaos and flame, humming with magic older than the Aesir. Loki took it gently, and as he did, his power surged back like blood returning to a severed limb. The ground quaked beneath him. I promise you, I'll keep your promise, Hel whispered, or I'll taunt you in every death. Loki gave a nod, wouldn't expect anything less. And then the Bifrost flared one last time. He returned not to salvation, but ruin. Smoke curled into the heavens, bodies lined the scorched streets of Hofdal. Screams echoed from the forest edge. The sky burned orange and red as Sutur walked the world again. The once quiet village of Hofdal was now a smoldering ruin. Homes reduced to ash, trees burned to skeletal silhouettes against a blood-red sky. The air was thick with soot, screams swallowed by the crackling roar of fire. At the center of the devastation stood a towering figure, cloaked in flame. Sutur, the Jotnar of endings, wreathed in a crown of ember and wrath. His molten blade pulsed like a living sun, dragging molten scars across the scorched earth. Before him, Odin Allfather, king of Asgard, lay bound in chains of searing metal, unconscious, broken. His beard lay discarded, split in half, like a snapped oath, and across from them stood Loki, Leviathan humming in his grasp, his breath shallow. Sutur turned, and his voice boomed like a volcanic storm. Son of fire and frost, he said with a knowing sneer. Blood of the giants, soul of the flame, join me. We will end the age of gods. Let the cosmos feel what they made you feel. Loki's lips twitched, the offer dangled before him like fruit from a tree he once planted himself. He could see it, burning Asgard to dust, watching the golden hall scream, letting the smoke faces of those who cast him aside melt in horror. The temptation surged like a rising tide. Why not? He owed him nothing. Odin, who used him, Frigga, who mourned but never fought, the rest judgmental, blind, cruel. But then he remembered Thor, not the warrior, the brother, the fool who reached for him even after everything, who laughed with him before the lies, who fought for him when all others turned away. He remembered Hel, how her illusions had pierced his soul. As she spared him, there was still something left that deserved saving. He lifted his eyes. As tempting as annihilation is, Loki drawled, I'd rather rule what's left. With a snap of his fingers, Leviathan ignited, a spear of black and red flame arcing toward the sky. The fire spiraled down, lashing at Sutur like a whip forged of stars. The battle began. Loki blinded across the field, appearing and disappearing, each illusion another dagger. Flames twisted around his cloak, shaping serpents of smoke and ice. Sutur answered each trick with fury, blades of molten rock cleaving through the illusions, carving canyons into the earth. The god of mischief danced, struck, vanished, returned. But the giant's power was unending, ancient, relentless. Loki's breath grew ragged, his tricks slowed. Vaden trembled in his hand. Sutur raised his flaming sword high. Then a voice, echoing through the smoke, ghost-like, Heimdall. His words floated on the edge of life and death. You are not just a god. You are Haltnor, older than Odin, born of ice and fire. Stop hiding. Loki staggered. The truth slammed into him like thunder. He wasn't merely adopted by Asgard. He wasn't just their outcast. He was older. He was something more. Loki's scream ripped through the battlefield, not of pain, but transformation. Vaden glowed white-hot. His skin crawled with frost and ember. Eyes danced up one arm, fired on the other. The power of chaos, the true origin of his blood, awakened. He looked up at Sutur, eyes glowing with twin light. And for the first time, Loki didn't trick or run. He unleashed. The ground trembled, the sky fractured, and in the eye of the storm, Loki stood transformed. His body blazed not with mortal flame, but with spectral fire, a light that shimmered with hues not seen in the waking world. Flickers of violet and silver danced across his skin, which now cracked with glowing veins of frost and ember. His eyes, no longer mischievous slits of green, burned like twin stars, ancient and full of wrath. When he spoke, his voice was not just heard, it resonated through the bones of the world. I am Loki, he thundered, son of two realms, blood of fire, soul of frost, trickster, no more. Sutur snarled, his molten chest expanding with fury. You dare stand against your own? But Loki's form blurred and split. Dozens of him burst like echoes in flame, weaving between strikes, disappearing and reappearing with every blink of the eye. Sutur swung his great blade, carving firestorms through the village, but every hit shattered only smoke and laughter. They fought through ruin, with shattered towers still ablaze, across collapsing rooftops where sparks fell like snow, into cratered earth that bled molten rivers. Loki darted through the air, bending reality as if it were threads in a loom. He summoned ethereal daggers, crafted from the raw will of Jotnar's sorcery. He carved glowing runes in midair, shaping cages of anti-creation to trap Surtur's feet. He blinked behind the Titan's guard, whispering spells of unraveling into his molten skin. Sutur roared, swinging with desperation. Now, his fire began to falter. Loki, mid-leap, summoned all of his might. Vaden, now a blade as long as a spear, pulsed with ancestral rage. With a final incantation, he chained Surtur's arms with bindings of spellfire, not to restrain, but to bind fate itself. And then, with a howl that cracked the clouds, he drove the blade through Surtur's chest. The primordial Jotnar gasped, not in agony, but in realization. No, he whispered, you are the end. And then, he burst into ash. Fire twisted upward like a reverse inferno. The sky cleared slowly, revealing stars dimmed by the smoke. The wind, long silenced, returned with a mournful whisper. The battle was over. Loki landed in the embers, his form slowly dimming, returning to flesh and breath. The fires around the village ebbed to dying flickers. Smoke rose gently, no longer wrathful. In the aftermath, Odin, broken and weary, stirred among the ruins. Alive, but beaten, Heimdall, lying near death, smiled faintly at the dawn. And the mortals, scattered, trembling, emerged from their hiding places. They looked upon the figure in the ashes, not with fear, but reverence. He had saved them. The god had walked among them. And for once, he did not ask for worship. But Loki did not kneel. He did not raise his arms in victory or demand loyalty. He looked east, toward the ruins of the Bifrost, and farther still, toward Asgard. I didn't do this to be thanked, he said, voice quiet now, yet still carrying weight. I did this because someone had to. And now, his gaze darkened. Someone has to rule. And so, the god of mischief, reborn in fire and ice, turned from the ash not as a villain or hero, but as a force no realm could deny. Smoke still curled from the bones of the village, rising in thin streams into a dawn that no longer burned red. The battle was over, but his scars would linger. Loki stood at the edge of the wreckage, the Vaden slung across his back, its flames now quiet. People of Midgard knelt, not out of worship, but in stunned reverence. Behind him, Odin sat against the blackened remains of a wall, too weak to rise, and Heimdall, breath shallow, blood seeping into the dirt, looked at Loki with fading eyes. "You may be the only one left," Heimdall murmured, "to rebuild of what remains." Loki didn't answer. He looked toward the horizon, where the shattered veins of the Bifrost shimmered faintly, its broken path still clinging to the sky like a ghost. He knew what waited beyond it: hollow halls, broken gods, silence. And yet he did not turn away. He did not return for obligation. He returned because he saw what could be. With a final look to the mortals who still watched him with a mixture of fear and awe, he stepped onto the Bifrost. His cloak caught the wind, trailing behind him like a banner. The bridge of light flared, responding to his blood, his claim, his will. The cosmos bowed to passage, and the air cracked with the force of forgotten power. As he walked, realms whispered, Alfheim, Vanaheim, Altenheim. They all felt the tremor of his ascent. And then, at last, he reached Asgard. Once the realm had gleamed like a sunrise reflected on gold. Now it stood fractured, silent. Statues lay crumbled. The throne room echoed with emptiness. Its banners had burned. The doors had rusted shut, until Loki pushed them open. The hall welcomed him, not with song or light, but with acknowledgement. The very stone seemed to remember his footsteps. He walked slowly, reverently, not as a conqueror, not as a son, but as a ruler. He passed the grey Hereth, long cold. He passed the swords once raised in arrogance. And then he stood before the throne. It was still there, untouched. For a moment he stared at it, at all it represented: betrayal, power, silence. And then he sat. No trumpet sounded, no choir sang, only the sound of breath. The weight settled across his shoulders like a mantle of flame and frost. In that moment, he did not feel like a villain, nor a hero, or even a god. He felt like something new. "I will restore what was," Loki whispered to the empty hall. "I will not rebuild their illusions. This realm will rise from ash, shaped by truth, not pretense, by cunning, not blind honor, by balance." The gods once feared his mischief, now they would respect his rule. And in the hollow silence of Asgard's bones, something began to stir. Power recognized its new vessel. The 9 realms would change. As Loki sat, hand resting lightly on the Vaden, the flames in the great hearth flickered back to life. He leaned forward, voice calm, certain that the 9 realms remember. The god they cast out is the god who saved them. The dragons of the north, history and told.